Hello and welcome to EVE Online. My name is High Speed Lemo. I'm a player within the Forest Corporation, a member corp of the initiative. In today's episode of How to EVE, we're talking about logistics. And not just logistics of shipping ships, we're talking about ships that actually keep you alive. So without further ado, let's roll this quick intro here and we'll get into some of my favorite ships of keeping us alive in a battlefield. Here's the intro in 3, 2, 1, roll intro. Welcome back, guys. It is time to talk logistics, and we're not shipping ships. We're just talking about ships. That was the dumbest joke ever, but hope you guys don't hate me. Anyway, we're getting right to just here. We're talking about my favorite top 8/9 ships to bring onto the battlefield. First and foremost, we're actually talking about, so it's going to be a descending order, and we're starting with the Banttom. Now, why am I starting with the Banttom as rank number 8/9? Well, the reason being is because, one, if you're a new player to Eve and you're just getting started and you're learning new ships, one of the most versatile roles you can get into is Logi. Especially when you join a new corporation or a smaller corp like that, flying Logi is essential on the battlefield. If you don't have the skills for PvP, Logi is pretty much the next best thing. With the Bantam, I have this ranked as number 9 slash last place because, one, here's the reason why it's on the list in the first place. It's incredibly cheap. It's only 5.1 mil. That means most corps can actually provide this to you for free, or as a new player, you can get into this at a relatively low cost. The reason why it's still here in this position, though, is because of these cap boosters. It is not a cap stable ship, and although I do love it, and it is effective on a battlefield, it just doesn't bring it well enough into one of the lower and higher spots. Next up is the Burst. Now, I love the Burst, and it has been always of my bane on the battlefield, especially when I first started getting into PvP. Having one of those slide in as you're trying to do a 1v1 in faction warfare against another frigate or destroyer, you know you're cooked. So this is just, once again, another cheap ship, but it is a little more expensive than the Bantam, but it is a little tankier, and this one does put out a little more reps with this fit in particular. Now, this one here, it might be a little more difficult for a new player to get into this ship specifically, but with the cap boosters loaded, it is stable, which brings it ahead of that Bantam. Now, the next up, I named this ship, this ship is named the Osprey. The Osprey, which is a cruiser class ship. It's coming at 7th place here. This, as you can see, is 100% cap stable, which is why it's on the list and why it's so effective. At the same time, you can still put out a lot of reps. I mean, look at this. This is still enough to really keep either a cruiser or battle cruiser or a battleship alive on the battlefield long enough to make a difference. But there's one downside here. As you can see, there is no prop. It is as stable as can be as long as it's not moving. I mean, yes, you can still chug along at 262 meters per second, but you're going to be very stable here in terms of just not moving around much on the battlefield, which leaves you open to getting blown up. So that's why it falls into this position here in 7th place. Coming in at 6 is, of course, one of my all-time favorites, the Scythe. Once again, another T1 cruiser that just excels in its position as a logistics ship. Now, with this one, it's not putting out as many reps as you can see here. It only has equipped with 2 mediums and 1 small, whereas the Osprey had a lot more reps. This is a little more versatile as you can equip a micro warp drive onto it and you can be really mobile on the battlefield. But also with the drones, you can put out some DPS or even some light shield maintenance. One other common thing to do here is also put some hull or armor maintenance robots in there or drones in there to help with repping things you can't necessarily rep if someone gets past those shield reps that you're putting out on field. Once again, a very versatile ship, but also really cost effective at only 36.2 mil estimated cost. That's why it falls in 6th place. The next up is one of my all-time favorites and one of the first logistics ships I've ever flown, the Exeutor. Now, the Exeutor has its own place. It is an armor ship, and it does a great job. So with this, you're going to see 416s across the board. It is cap stable, and you also have remote SIBOs here. This is an absolutely fantastic ship if you're camping or setting up a gate camp in low sec or even in null or in faction warfare or in a corrupted system with Angels faction warfare. Highly effective in all those roles. Here you can also, once again, you can have drones for DPS. You have some Hornet EC300s, Or you can have logistics drones as well to rep some shields if you can't get past those initial reps. So if you want to help someone move along a little faster being fully repped up, a perfect ship. And also, last but not least, the cost. 43 mil roughly. That's a very low cost ship and puts out a lot on the battlefield. That is some really good stuff. That's why it falls in number 5. Number 4, the Guardian. First and foremost, this is a staple on battlefields everywhere across nullsec and lowsec. It is highly effective in its role, however, it does require there to be a fleet. This is not something you can fly on your own or by yourself or solo. So you'll see here, we have to have the remote cap transfers and crap boosters on there as well, so that way you can link up. Usually the link up process is one ship above you, one ship below you. So if you're in a fleet, you have your own logistics chat, right? You have your characters that are flying other guardians here. One character above you will be receiving a transfer, and that person will also be transferring to you. And a person below you will be transferred to them, but they will be transferring to you. So there's like what's called a cap train, keeping you all stable enough. But the problem is, if you all get separated, that cap chain breaks and can cause issues with the continuance of reps on the battlefield, and that's essential in fleet warfare. The reason why this one falls in here is because, once again, it is on the more expensive side. It is, once again, a staple on the battlefield, but it doesn't take the number 1 spot because you need a huge fleet for it. Coming up, top 3, the Basilisk. As you can see, I am a big fan when it comes to shield fit ships. I love kitier, tanky ships that are fast and tanky is kind of a oxymoron. You can only have really one or the other. But there's a lot of ships that do a great job while being at the same time very, very strong on the battlefield. The Basilisk is one of those ships. You have 3 large remote shield boosters. You have 1 medium. You also have those 2 cap transmitters to have that cap chain. Once again, this is a fleet-based ship. However, you are moving a little bit faster here. You're moving at 1,500 meters per second. It's only costing 307 mil. Now, once again, this is for an experienced player to be flying this, and it's relatively expensive, but it does a great job on the battlefield of keeping players alive. But also with these, there it is, the light armor maintenance bots. So all those kind of volleys that might get past those initial shield reps, and you're catching up to the fit, that's how you can rep up your friends. All right, let's get into the top 2 of some of my favorites. Second placed is the Deacon. Yes, a small ship is one of my favorites. Obviously, coming from faction warfare and low sec as a background, I've always loved smaller and faster ships. Anything below a destroyer or a cruiser is one of my favorite things to fly. The Deacon is obviously one of those things, especially on the battlefield. It's incredibly handy to have if you're flying assault frigates like the Retribution, which is one of my personal favorite ships. So this one, as you can see, stable with the boosters and running, moves at 2100 ms, and it's only 55 mil. So it's very, very cheap and effective for an Omega player to have this and running it with an assault frigate fleet. Really, really good combo. And taking the number 1 spot for one of my personal favorite ships to run and work with is the Kirin. Once again, it is a little more expensive than a Deacon. However, look at this fit in particular. 29 minutes. It's not cap stable, but it takes 29 minutes to drain. That is fantastic. And at the same time, you still got 3 small remote shield boosters. You're repping out, if you're solo, you're repping at about 339 HP for 3.4 seconds. That's very, very good for a solo frigate to be cranking out. That's still, once again, not cap stable. Absolutely fantastic to have. You only have 1 drone spot, so you typically fit that with DPS to try and whore on some kills. But otherwise, a nice, fast, tanky ship clicking at 2,500 meters per second, 85 mil. One of my all-time favorites. And that, once again, wraps up my favorite logistics ships. But I do want to call out one thing on my list. If you are a new player to EVE, the top ones that you can be in, and I'll reduce this here to atoms here now, but the Banttom, which was the first ship we talked about here, it's a T1 frigate, the Burst, the Osprey, the Scythe, and the Exec are some of the best ships to get into as a new player. And if you're still on an alpha account, you can fly almost all of these ships That's the best part. You can be a part of any major battlefield in these ships. Obviously, there is some tweaking you have to do with the fits, but all of these you can fly and make a difference on a battlefield. And I hope to see you there. Once again, I'm High Speed Limo. This is How to Eve, talking logistics, and I'll see you on the next episode. Cheers.